Hi, good morning, everyone. Hello and welcome to day 2 of Virtually 2023. Nomensa's free virtual web accessibility and digital inclusion conference. My name is Niki. I'm the business development manager here at Nomensa in our European office based in the Netherlands. We hope that everyone that joined us yesterday had a chance to enjoy the talks and that and today we have another great day lineup with sessions from Amani Ali, accessibility consultant at Nomensa, Heather Hepburn, accessibility lead at Skyscanner, and Richard Morton, head of accessibility at Central Digital and Data Office for the UK government. We are joined this week by MyClearText, who are providing live captions, and you can access this by clicking on the closed caption button at the bottom of Zoom, or alternatively, we have provided a stream text link in the chat for a fully adjustable page of captions. Moreover, all sessions will be recorded and will be available online shortly after the conference ends on. So first, I would like to introduce Amani Ali, who is the accessibility consultant here at Nomensa, who will be covering the topic of creating accessible designs for the neurodiverse. Please do get involved in the discussion in the chat and say hello. We would love to know where you're watching us from. And also, please make sure that your chat settings are switched on to everyone, not just the host and panelists, so that everybody can see your messages. And if you have any questions for Amani, submit them to the Q&A box. We'll try to get through as many questions as we can in the end of the presentation. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Amani to kick things off.
Hi, thank you so much for joining us. My name is Amani, and I'm the accessibility consultant at Nomensa. And in my talk, I'll be speaking about how to design for neurodiversity and why it's important, especially in this day and age where technology and awareness about neurodiversity is increasing day by day. So in this talk, I'll be covering 3 main topics: what is neurodiversity, challenges neurodivergent people face, and designing for neurodiverse. So we're living in a time of increased awareness about ADHD, dyslexia, autism, and other neurological conditions. We hear the words neurodiverse, neurodivergent, neurotypical, but what is the meaning of neurodiversity exactly? So basically, neurodiversity refers to the natural variation in our brains function and process, in how our brains function and process information. This means that some people's brains work differently from others, which can lead to differences in behavior, thinking, and learning. So neurodiversity is a way of celebrating these differences and recognizing that there is actually no normal or right way for a brain to really work. So instead, it encourages us to appreciate and accommodate for the unique strengths and challenges that come with different ways of thinking and processing information. So by embracing neurodiversity, we can create a more inclusive society that values and supports all individuals, regardless of how their brains work. So the word neurodiversity, where did it actually come from? Neurodiversity was coined in the 90s by an Australian sociologist named Judy Singer, who described herself as likely to be on the autistic spectrum. So Judy Singer, she used the term to challenge the dominant belief that neurological differences, particularly those associated with conditions like autism, ADHD, and dyslexia, should be viewed solely as disorders or disabilities to be cured or corrected. And then, so she argued that society should actually embrace and accommodate neurodivergent individuals and acknowledging their unique strengths and contributions. So since its introduction, the concept of neurodiversity has gained recognition and acceptance amongst advocates, researchers, and communities supporting individuals with neurodivergent conditions. So like over the years, it has sparked discussions around the rights and inclusion and appreciation of neurodivergent individuals, and then also challenging the traditional approaches that aim to normalize or medicalize the neurological differences. One of Judy's quotes, which I found pretty interesting, that I've shared on the screen: I think the concept of neurodiversity has been world-changing by giving us a new perspective on humanity, but it needs to mature to the point where we see that human nature is complex and nature is beautiful. So not really. So this umbrella term neurodiversity informs others to see that those who are neurodiverse as having a differently wired brain, as opposed to being someone unable to fit into the model of social norms. So neurodivergent people, they may move about the world in a way that is quote unquote not typical, but it's a pretty broad umbrella term that's commonly used in regard to autism, but it covers ADHD, dyslexia, any trauma, OCD, anxiety, depression, Tourette's, auditory processing, and Down syndrome, etc. There's a whole list. There's so much more, but it's a pretty general term which not really everyone likes, especially when it's used to replace a specific disability or diagnosis, because it's not a synonym, it's an umbrella term. It is thought that up to 15% of the UK population are neurodiverse, and if you calculate it, that's actually 10 million people, which is quite a lot. But only half of this group are aware of it. And it's also important to note that many conditions are left undiagnosed due to the long waiting list. So this percentage may likely be much higher. So neurodivergent individuals can face various challenges that may differ depending on their specific condition. So I'll talk a bit more about the challenges that they face. So I've categorized the challenges into 3 sections. We've got distractions, we've got wayfinding, and we've got sensory overload. So under distractions, certain elements on a website or app can be distracting for cognitive processing, making it harder for users to focus, understand information, or even complete tasks. By avoiding these distracting elements and focusing on providing a clean, well-organized, and user-centered design, you can help users maintain their focus and also comprehend information a bit more easily and engage effectively with either website or app. Some common factors that can be distracting are having autoplay media, flashing animations, and just general visual clutter. I'll go into more detail about that later on. The second category is wayfinding. So many people with neurodivergent conditions, they need to and thrive on repetition, predictability, and just having clear boundaries in order to feel safe and in control. So the interface needs to make sense. So then having effective wayfinding is key. And again, this can be implemented by having clear navigation menus, by having clear descriptive labels for navigation, helps users to understand the available pages and sections that are on the web page. Breadcrumbs, they help to show users their current location within the website and just provide a trail to trace back where they were. Having a search functionality, it just allows users to quickly find specific content on pages, and you just need to ensure that the search function is easily accessible and provides the relevant results based on user searches. And then lastly, just consistent design and layout. Just so if you just maintain a consistency in your design and layout, it just reduces the cognitive load from users. And then the third section, sensory overload. So sensory overload on the website It refers to a situation where a website can just overwhelm or overstimulate the user's cognitive capacity. So this can occur when there's an excessive amount of sensory information, or when the presentation of sensory elements is just too intense or chaotic. And then this just makes it challenging for users to process and focus, basically. And then basically in many situations, when a user is faced these either 1, 2, or 3 challenges, the chance of them either not returning to the website or completing the journey is pretty high. So some people just may lose trust in the brand or organization, or just completely avoid it because of their bad experience. So designing for neurodiverse so is important because as 1 in 5 users will most likely be neurodiverse. We must understand and consider these things before we start designing. So neurodivergent people have different traits which can affect how they learn, read and write, focus, concentrate, recall information, make decisions, and just basically understand things. So the 5 topics I'll be covering are 1, language, 2, font, 3, color, 4, media, 5, communications. So when we are designing for neurodiverse, there's a couple of key things that we need to consider, which is helping users understand what things are and how to use them, helping users to find what they need, use clear and understandable content, helping users to avoid mistakes and know how to correct them, help users focus, ensure processes don't rely on memory, and just provide help and support. So I'll go into more detail about them all. So the first section I'll cover is language. So a common issue revolves around the use of language. So your words matter, and the way they come across to readers also matter. So when you're writing online content, it's important to be mindful that there are people with different reading skills. So you just have to ensure that you're catering for them as well. So having easy, simple, and understandable language makes your writing more accessible. Having easy language is helpful for people with dyslexia, ADHD, and just other types of neurodiverse users. And not only that, it can also help those people where English is not their first language. So yeah, so you're just basically being able to cater for all people. So when it comes to content, make sure you're using clear and simple formats by dividing large chunks of text into smaller paragraphs. Longer ones are frustrating and make it impossible to focus for some people, especially with those with limited attention spans. And using bullet points also help break up your information. Providing visual cues, they provide meaningful information, they guide attention and enhance users' comprehension. So this example that I provided on the right-hand side is a screenshot from a car hire company's frequently asked questions page. As you can see, there are clear boundaries between each question and they sit within its own accordion. And there are visual cues used, for example, the arrows to let users know that there's further information provided below. So if they click on it, there's information below, and also it's a consistent element as it's used across multiple websites. Okay, so then what should be avoided? Well, long chunks of text. Long paragraphs can be difficult to read and focus for some people, especially with those with limited attention spans. They may just stop reading at all as it may become too overwhelming for them. Avoid non-literal text such as metaphors and idioms. People who fall under the spectrum, the autistic spectrum, they usually have trouble understanding metaphors and they may take it quite literally, which is what you don't want. avoid using jargon. Like I mentioned earlier, everyone benefits from simple, clear copy, not just your neurodiverse users. So having unknown terms or phrases may just increase cognitive load for the user. So it's best to avoid industry-specific terms in your content. And then lastly, just avoid using passive tone and double negatives, as it can make sentences more complex and harder to read and understand. And having an active tone can make your content sound much more natural and humor friendly. So the example that I provided is on the right hand side, is from Ling's Cars frequently asked page. And just by looking at the example, you can see we are overloaded with information. So some people, they just might feel really frustrated and just want to get a straight answer. So the questions are answered, but they are followed with a but, which can also be confusing for some readers. There are also multiple capital letters used, different font formats, such as bold and italics, and it's just overall a whole sensory overload to people, which will slow down their cognitive flow. And there is a sentence which made me laugh, which was, please don't order the new car if you may want to cancel it. I put my neck on the line to commit to these cheap new cars. So for some people on the spectrum with it, or with anxiety or with any other type of neurological condition, they just may feel like they're being told off or something is their fault before anything even started. So they just might quit and just not come back to this either. So then again, regarding to language, a common problem is having people either not understanding or being able to interpret a message. So if you find yourself having an increased load of users sending emails or using live chat or any other content method and sending questions about information that you have presented on the website, perhaps there maybe need to be some sort of content restructuring or like analysis or user research, just to ensure that your information is clearly written and also very easy to find. So moving on to color. So a large percentage of autistic people are highly sensitive to brightness of colors. And also color psychology suggests that different colors can have an impact on our moods, feelings, and even behaviors. So color is a powerful communication tool, and it can influence mood and impact performance. So certain colors have been associated with like increased blood pressure or increased eye strain. And then color has like a symbolic meaning in various different cultures, but the way color impacts us tends to be universal. So these are just a couple of examples of positive colors. So we've got blue, which is known to provide a feeling of calm and soothingness. And it can be particularly helpful for people with sensory sensitivities, and it may help reduce stress. We've got green, which can help to reduce the feeling of chaos. It does also have a soothing effect on the neurodiverse, and the color green can be used to retain like emotional balance and help people to feel calm, safe, and in control. We have pink, which according to research is the most calming shade in the color palette. And with the muted colors, the Living Autism Initiative actually suggests using soft, mild, muted colors / tones are actually neurodiversity friendly, as it's again calming, soothing. But regardless, whatever color that you do use, you just need to ensure that the minimum color contrast ratio is met, which is 4.5 to 1. This just ensures that it's accessible to everyone, including people with visual impairments. And then moving on to colors that may have a negative impact. So we've got red. So the color red in particular can have quite a strong effect on those who are autistic. It is referred to as a high energy color and it can increase blood pressure, resulting in tensional hyperaction, and it could also trigger meltdowns or just general upset. Yellow, similar to red, can also be overstimulating for people with autism. And then again, bright colors, they can hurt people's eyes. They're just very overstimulating, and it just causes a lot of clashing, which causes people to not be able to focus properly. But at the end of the day, there's no real right or wrong color scheme to use. It's just if you do use certain colors, just you could try using research to understand your audience better. As you know, red is not always such a bad color, but it's just good, something to keep in mind. So moving on to font. So from a design point of view, the font you choose, I guess as designers, the font you choose is crucial for aesthetics. It looks nice, it's pretty, it just completes your interface. However, it's even more important for your neurodiverse audience. So the type of font that you use does matter, as some fonts are more readable and easily digestible than others. And again, so if you just choose the right font for learners, it will increase their retention time. So what to use? Stick to sans serif typefaces. These fonts tend to be the most popular choice for body text, and they are actually preferred by dyslexic users. Some of the recommended fonts include Arial, Verdana, Calibri, etc. And a little fun fact, I know Comic Sans is like the biggest enemy for many designers, but it's actually considered dyslexia friendly. So that's another font to consider if you want. And just make your font large enough. So this doesn't matter just only for your neurodiverse users, but also for people with visual impairments. So the suggested size is a minimum of 12 points. And then any headings that follow after should at least be 20% bigger than the body text, just so it's easily differentiable. And again, having a large character spacing enhances users' readability. So what not to use? Serif fonts, they make it harder for users to differentiate letters, especially pairs like D and B or P and Q. So these fonts are a nightmare for someone who is dyslexic. Avoid underline and italics. These can make it, again, difficult for people with dyslexia to recognize and distinguish certain letters. And then the slanted shape can also disrupt the visual processing, which is, again, likely to cause letter confusion. And as you know, that dyslexia affects the reading fluency. So if you do have a letter that is underlined or italic, that can slow their reading flow even more. And then avoid using all capital letters. Again, same as I mentioned before, it can just be harder to read and process. And it can also just feel like you're being shouted at, which may startle some people. So again, it just all comes down to comprehension and readability when it comes to fonts and language. So the less your users are able to understand your content, the more questions you may have, or people just not being able to complete the journey. In media, I'll be covering things like animations, videos, images, and audio content. So or what to avoid is autoplaying videos and audio. So any unexpected movement, especially that's very sudden, can be quite surprising and scary. And not only is it overly stimulating, but it's very distracting, and people on the spectrum may feel overwhelmed. People with ADHD will find it extremely hard to focus. And just like a small distraction can just make people lose track completely, which is what you really want to avoid. Don't use flashing animation. flashing animated GIFs or any other type of animation can really throw people off. So too much stimulation can induce anxiety in people on the spectrum, which may even lead to physical pain, withdrawal, or meltdown. And you also need to be very careful of flashing animations, especially for people with epilepsy, as it could trigger seizures. And also just avoid flashing colors and patterns, as again, it's just a big cognitive overload for users. So you want to be able to give users control, let them decide. So by providing play or pause buttons on videos and audio, this way users can decide themselves if they want to watch or listen to the content. Provide subtitles, captions, and transcripts. So not only does this help users who have vision or hearing impairments, but also the neurodiverse audience. So these can just help users really focus and understand the content rather than just relying on their ears. It's a sense of confirming what they've heard as well. So people on the spectrum, they also have heightened sensitivity to sounds. So again, captions do help to reduce that sensory overload. And just personally, I actually can't watch a video without captions. I do find it difficult. And sometimes if there are no captions on the video, I might just skip it completely and not watch it. Unless it's super important, then I'll have to. But I know this is like quite a common thing recently. So yeah, providing captions is pretty important. Moving on to communication. So we have communication in terms of contact. How can people contact you? It's important to provide more than one form, and the common one is probably contact number. However, those people with anxiety, they might not feel comfortable picking up the phone and speaking with someone. Email address is also another common form of contact. However, some neurodiverse people may have a burning question that needs to be answered ASAP, and they might also they might just worry and panic if they haven't received an email soon, which is also common for people on the spectrum. So this is where live chat and social media comes in. So live chat gives users the ability to speak with a real person and to be able to either get their full answers or just some sort of indication to their answer, which will help ease their mind and cause them to worry less. Same with social media, it's a growing platform. Lots of people use it, and if someone is familiar with that platform, they will lean more towards that way of communication, such as Twitter. Another type of communication is giving messages to users. So you want to be able to communicate feedback to users without making them feel like they're at fault or responsible. It can just add pressure to users and just general panic. Instead, you want to use a human tone, provide positive reinforcement, and clear feedback and instructions. If you do have notifications, give users the ability to mute notifications as well. So just don't overload users with alerts, as again, that will create a whole sensory overload for them. Timeout, if you have timeouts, these should be adjustable, as everyone has various processing times. Some people take longer than others. So if you have like a 5-minute timeout, and that will just send users back to the login page. For others, it might take them more than 5 minutes to process information. And then just ensuring that feedback is provided. So having like a complete total absence of feedback, it prevents users from knowing if an action has been successful or if a mistake has been made. And it also increases the likelihood that an error will be repeated if no feedback has been provided. So in summary, there are basically a couple of different ways of looking at the brain. There are a couple of different ways of looking at human variation in brains. So like one is disorder and the other is diversity. In the disorder view, we get things like ADHD, autism, etc. And there's a way of looking at people who are different and saying it's wrong, it's bad, and we need to treat it. And then through the diversity lens, we see that actually there are no normal brains, and there's a lot of different ways that people can be, and that creativity allows for new possibilities, new inventions, new ways of looking at the world, new ways of designing, and just new ways of experiencing the world, basically, that can help either solve our problems or just be interesting and unique. So at the end of the day, you just need to know your user. So being able to test your designs with your users, and just ensuring that what you've designed is fit for purpose, or if not, then maybe redesign from there. And then questions that you should ask yourself is, when reading your content, could this be misunderstood or could this be misinterpreted? If you feel like the answer is yes, or maybe a slight yes, then it probably needs to be redesigned.